You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Alongside Mike Chappell and Matt Adams, I'm Dave Griffiths. Matt Adams, let me enunciate the T there at the end. I kind of swallowed it there. My bad, big guy. Thank you all for joining us. Going to be a fun, I think, hour we have ahead of us. We are in the NFL range, in the conference championship round of the playoffs. 4 teams left. Plenty of good quarterbacks. Plenty of quarterbacks that people argue whether they're good or not in this last 4. But heck, they're doing something right to get.
They're there,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Anybody will take that being here at this point of the year, still playing. But our Colts centered chat today will focus entirely on the quarterback position, where they are, what happens next year, things to do in the future for the benefit of Anthony Richardson, all that stuff. So a good way to continue on our Colts offseason coverage is to focus on the one position, Mike, that matters above everything else.
We probably did that last year about this time, but with a different slant on it.
Just a little bit.
You know, who is the quarterback going to be? Now we know who the quarterback's going to be, and I wrote about it, posted it yesterday about Anthony Richardson, and because it's funny, I'm watching Lamar Jackson, I'm watching Josh Allen and a few other players, and that's exactly the style and the impact the Colts envision with Anthony Richardson.
Yep.
It just is. I'm not comparing him with those two guys at all because they've done it. But that's what you want. And remember we talked to Chris Ballard at the end of the season, and he said when you have that guy, he just makes teams defend you differently because he puts so much stress on the middle of the defense and in the edges. And we were watching with Jonathan Taylor go for 188 against Houston. What would he have done if there was a threat, not even a serious, just a significant threat at quarterback that game? So I think it's really intriguing what this team might have with AR.
What they want to do is get to this point of the year and keep on playing. Now, conference championships this weekend on Sunday on CBS 4. If you're in Central Indiana, the Chiefs and the Ravens play at 3 o'clock in Baltimore, the site of Matt Gay's glorious leg from this year. And then the Lions visit San Francisco to take on the 49ers at 6:30 p.m. right after that first game. That'll be on Fox 59 here in Central Indiana. So the 2 championship games winners go on to the
Who's
Super
your money
Bowl.
on?
Your money or my money?
Who? Yes. I've learned to quit betting because, they keep building casinos.
Right,
but
so it needs to be my money.
Who do you like in these two?
I like... it's hard for me to pick against Mahomes, even though the Ravens are clearly the better team.
They are.
And Lamar Jackson is playing out of his gourd right now, as he has most of this season. I just find it difficult to pick against Mahomes, but I will, nevertheless, because I do think that the Ravens are the best team in the league right now.
They're the best team playing the best right now.
Right, exactly.
Which is a bad combination if you're trying to beat them.
It is. So maybe the Chiefs' shortcomings finally do catch up to them in the playoffs here. And I don't think Mahomes being on the road matters at all, like it didn't last week. I know that was a storyline, and I understand why it's a storyline because it's never happened before, and it's so unique that he went through so long in his career and never played on the road. So I'm not criticizing the media or talking heads for bringing it up, but I do not think it was ever going to be a big deal.
All right, guys, I know it's the playoffs, so it's different, but the guys won plenty of games on the road and performed at a high level, so it's not going to psych him out.
No. He didn't win in Indy 2 years ago.
He did not win in Indy.
True.
There you go. Colts got that going for them. Hey, so I'll take the Ravens in the AFC, and I want so badly for the Lions to win in the NFC.
I'm going with the Lions.
Let's go.
I just think there's something there. First, they're a pretty good team.
They are.
Jared Goff's playing out of his mind, but that's a good team. I think they find a way because I just think the Niners have sort of been almost finding ways almost to not win. And I'm guessing Deebo Samuel's plays because guys play this time. But I just think there's something special with the Lions.
Yeah, I would love to see the Lions go on, so I want to pick them, so I will pick them. And San Francisco will cry an entire offseason for some other reason. Like last year was the fact that they lost every one of their quarterbacks in that game
Brock
against
Purdy
Philly.
wasn't that good.
Exactly. Not that good, but they'll find something else to cry about this offseason and then go into next year and say this is our year, and then we'll see about that. But anyway, Sunday, February 11th in Las Vegas is of course Super Bowl 58, Matt, I believe it is.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Three ones there, and that'll be fun, and that'll be a heck of a weekend for the NFL. Of course, we've talked about the what's going on with Pro Football Hall of Fame, as always, Super Bowl week. And Chap's rolling that. Looking forward to just reading your body language after the final deliberations are all done.
We'll have a podcast before the Super Bowl about the Hall of Fame, just because.
Of course, we have to, naturally.
Maybe there's a reason.
Yes, there could be a reason for that. And yeah, so that'll be fun. That'll be eager. I'm eager to see what happens there.
And I mentioned this I was talking to Jake Corey on the radio the other day, and he's good at trying to get me to say things I can't say. We have had our meeting.
Okay, it is done.
So it is done.
Okay.
And
I didn't know that it was done.
Yeah, it's done.
Was it over the last week that this happened?
Last week we had our our meeting. So
all right.
So, but it's going to be interesting, but again, everything is under wraps.
Of course, very much so.
For a lot of reasons, but no, we'll have a good discussion. We'll figure out what day we want to do it.
A good discussion coming up in the future on this Colts Blue Zone podcast. Nowhere else can you get the musings of.
I could get myself fired from
you
the
could
selection.
do it somewhere else.
From the selection process. Right. I can get myself dismissed. But I don't want to do that.
Yes, I don't want to see that happen, but I will be relieved because then I can just kind of not do talking points. I'll just be like, okay, let's talk about this thing.
Your last year, Chap, you can go out with a bang.
I've always said that if you do this long enough, the one thing that you've got is your reputation, and that people trust you. If you're ever going to betray trust, make sure it's something really big.
Darn right.
Not just like I hear that. No, go out where people are really PO'd at you because of what you did. So I won't do that. But I've always had it in the back of my mind is go out with a bang so they remember you. It'll be for the wrong reasons.
Right, of course.
Once you betray trust of
you're
an
done.
Owner or a head coach, you're done.
Yeah.
Or a player. So
right. Now, is that a lifetime appointment? How does that work with once you're on the committee?
Well, I say lifetime. I've done it for like 30 years. They take a person from the market. I replaced John Banch, longtime star guy, the late John Banch, who's going to go into the.
I was about to say I wanted to bring that up.
Indiana Sports Writers and Sportscasters Hall of Fame.
Big congrats to John Banch. Who started day one, just like you did, covering the Indianapolis Colts back in the day. I saw you tweeting about it, so I wanted to bring it up today.
And that's what I sort of. It's kind of strange how that works. I was a sports editor in Anderson for 10 years. The Colts moved. In the first year, they were having training camp in Anderson, so I sort of stayed there and worked. But John was a good guy, and he'll go in, and we'll be there in April in Greenwood, which is really a cool thing. There's a lot of us from the Star who've been fortunate enough to be in the Hall of Fame, and the Phil Richardson, Tom Reitmans, and all these guys. So it'll be pretty cool. But no, I replaced him. Unlike AP, which we could spend a podcast on Indy not having representation in the AP honors, which is ludicrous. Everybody in all teams, all markets in the Hall of Fame have a representative in the Hall of Fame. There's 50 of us, so there's 32 with each of the teams, and then there's a bunch of at-larges. So I'll do it until I either betray trust or I retire. So, but it's pretty cool. It's very, very, very spirited debate. But again, let's not go down that rabbit hole now. We'll have that, but no, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, and it'll need to be more than just a rabbit hole. It'll need to be quite a day.
We will. we can stretch an hour of BS.
Oh, of course. Like with the best of them.
It's our specialty.
Here we are. We're 9 minutes in, and all we're doing is BS.
Exactly.
But no, it's always cool, and there's always debate. So yeah, we'll get to that in a few weeks.
Hey, the couple fillings in of coaching vacancies across the league. We entered the week with 5 openings. We're down to 3 right now. The first one, the big domino falling with Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan to come back to the NFL and coach the Los Angeles Chargers. 3 times Big Ten champion with the Wolverines just last year, an undefeated season, winning a national title. Of course, previously, before he was with Michigan, he was with the San Francisco 49ers, so some experience in the NFL before. Those 4 years in San Francisco were tremendous. 3 of them, he went to the NFC Championship game. 1 of those 3 went on to the Super Bowl, eventual loss to the Baltimore Ravens that year, and his brother John, the Harbaugh, if you will. And just so happens there will be a Harbaugh next year because they play in the regular season. The Chargers and the Ravens do. And then the year after that, 2025, is when the Colts play the AFC West. So the Colts will face their former quarterback and captain comeback himself, Jim Harbaugh, in 2025 out there. So it seemed like it was something that was almost inevitable. Him coming back to the NFL, even before everything went down.
I thought you were going to say the Chargers. I thought the Chargers thing just made total sense.
There you go. Why do you think the Chargers made sense?
He's got the quarterback. Yeah. He's got the quarterback.
It's the obvious answer, right?
I mean, why if you're Harbaugh or Bill Belichick, who's still, how many interviews is he going to have with Atlanta? I don't know. It's hard to know what's going on there. But when you're at that point in their careers, more so with Belichick, obviously, but you're not going to go somewhere where Washington. What's their quarterback future in Washington? Atlanta. I don't know what you do. So go somewhere. We've always looked at the Chargers, and I really like Tom Telesco. I think he's a really good guy. He's a friend. Something's had not worked there because they were just not very good. Well, they were that 7-9. 9-7,
just a perennial underachiever
with star power, with star power at prime positions. So for Harbaugh now to go there, and it seemed like he's always had, when he's had that quarterback, he's been really, really good. Who did he take with Frisco? Was that?
It's Colin Kaepernick.
Kaepernick.
Kaepernick was one of the first of this latest wave,
right.
I think, of super mobile quarterbacks with. He had a rocket arm, man, Kaepernick
right. And the Colts beat him out there back in the day. But no, I just thought that made so much sense. Back on the West Coast, but with the quarterback. I just don't see these marquee guys going somewhere when you don't know who the quarterback. And we're going to get into that with the Colts.
Right.
If you don't have a quarterback, it's just everything is such a struggle.
Yeah. And you mentioned Tom Telesco. The Chargers fired him, so he was looking elsewhere, but not for super long, as the Raiders hired him as their GM. So he's staying out west as well, in the AFC West. Spent a lot of time with the Colts as an area scout, Telesco did. Director of pro scouting, director of player personnel, vice president of football operations here in Indianapolis, 1998 to 2012, the golden years there of the Peyton Manning era, and then was with the Chargers for a decade from 2013 to 2023 before now moving to their AFC West rival. And I would love to get this isn't the place for it on this podcast, but I'd love to just pick the brains of someone who's covered the Chargers for a long time to see what was missing there. Like, because Telesco, you mentioned that he has marquee players in star positions. Like, the GM from that era, that perspective can only do so much. He's got to get the players. The coaches have to mix the ingredients, and then the players have to execute. You know, it's kind of 3 levels of get the players, coach the players execute. Like, what could he have done more? Were there did you get the stars but not fill out the roster? Was your depth just hot garbage the entire time? Like, what would be somebody's opinion out there of the actual roster and what Telesco was able to accomplish? Because you're right. Like, you look across, I think the perception of them around the league is they have a lot of talent. They have a lot of star power, and for some reason they're just underachievers. I wonder if out there they'd be like, well, yeah, there's some big stars, but the depth is just not there. And
if you see it from week to week, you know.
Right. You do. And that's why I say you got to look at somebody out there.
And again, I haven't researched it because that's not my area, but what was their record in one-score games? I bet it was not very good.
Right.
I think when it came time to make the plays, they didn't make the plays.
And you need players to make plays too, and they have some players. So maybe they think the fault lies in the players, and it lies in Herbert. It lies in Eckler. It lies in for the years Antonio Gates and Keenan Allen. Yeah, exactly. Whoever it was during that time. So like I said, I think would be an interesting discussion. The second head coaching opening was just announced. I think it was Adam Schefter who broke the news on ESPN right before we started this podcast. And that's the Carolina Panthers opening appears to be going to Dave
Canales?
Canales, that's it, Canales, who was the offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers last year. His first year was an offensive coordinator there, and certainly led to a resurgent season for Baker Mayfield. His best career is not really even resurgent, kind of resurgent in a way, but his best season entirely in his 4 or 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is in the NFL. Getting the Buccaneers to the playoffs, getting them a win in the playoffs over a terrible Eagles team that we don't need to talk about, but Nick
Sirianni still has a job,
keeping his job, exactly. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. And there's bringing in Vic Fangio.
I was gonna say it's
just all
it's all coming together. It's all moving around and coming back together to the Colts. It all comes back to Indianapolis somehow. But anyway, so Canales gets that job, trying to do to Bryce Young what he did for Baker Mayfield, obviously, this year. And they have a connection there. The new GM in Carolina,
Dan
Morgan, came from
went
Seattle.
Went to school with Reggie, I believe. I think Reggie was tweeting that they would, at Miami, I believe.
Okay. Well, he was in Seattle for a long time before he went to Carolina, and that's how he knew Canales, because Canales spent a bunch of years there in Seattle.
There's always dots to connect.
Yep, with Russell Wilson.
And the higher up the food chain as far as coach, GM, the dots, there's not a lot of separation between those dots.
No, they're your guys. And that's
no one should be surprised at that.
Yes, it happens a lot. So 3 positions left, 3 head coaching positions left. The Falcons, the Seahawks, and the Commanders. Like you said, Bill Belichick's still out there. A couple other candidates still out there, so we'll just have to keep our we'll keep you updated here and online on Twitter at Colts.
Don't you think that Belichick gets one, Vrabel gets one, and then
after that, I don't know. It seems like the Falcons also really do like that Texans coordinator, the offensive coordinator. They've had him for a couple. Slowick, yeah, mm-hmm. for a couple interviews. So I don't know. Maybe they pull a fast one and go with him.
What if you're Atlanta? We've talked about this, and you bring in Bill Belichick for now a 3rd interview. What are you talking about?
I don't know. 2 should be enough. Yeah, you don't need
one should be enough.
Bill Belichick, man, come on.
Excuse me. Yeah, I'm the guy that beat you when I was down 28-3. I mean, what do you say to him? That to me, that's just so strange. How the first interview, the second interview, I would think that's when yes or no. Right. It's just strange. Of course, that's probably when you deal with Bill Belichick. It's just going to be strange.
Right. The Colts assistant general manager Ed Dods is still considered a very attractive general manager candidate.
They're going to lose him one of these years.
They will, one of them. He's going to stop taking his name out of consideration, which he's done a couple times in the past. And he will find a spot that he likes and people who like him. It's going to go both ways eventually. He was considered a finalist for the Raiders opening. I know he had an interview with the Chargers as well for their GM opening, so we'll keep an ear out for Ed Dods. Could be in Indy next year, might not be in Indy next year. We'll see over the next coming weeks when they finish making those hires also.
And I mentioned that mostly because Jim Harbaugh got hired with the Chargers, but they do not have a general manager right now because they fired Telesco, and so they're got to find somebody that's going to be able to match with Harbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's obvious that Harbaugh is going to have a big.
He'll have a big role
there.
He'll have a big role. Whoever they're going to bring in is going to be a guy that will sort of understand that he's below Harbaugh in the pecking order.
Yeah. So I don't know if Dodds would be interested in that because so many teams have been interested in him before. Like, why would he take that? Like that seems to me like a losing proposition.
Maybe that's why the thing with Belichick in Atlanta is not done because they're saying, "Hey, we want you to be a coach. We're not giving you carte blanche on personnel."
Right. Who knows? Only the people in the room the room where it happens, as they say. The Colts have made some coaching staff changes. Shane Steichen, of course, when we sat down with him after the season, told us when we asked him about coaching staff changes, he said, I really value continuity. And he stressed that multiple times when we were trying to kind of pick and prod about specifically whether Gus Bradley would be back next year. Shane Steichen said then, yeah, I like continuity. I like continuity. I want continuity. But we will not have entire continuity on the defensive side of the ball because the Colts will not renew the contracts for defensive assistant coaches Nate Ollie on the defensive line and Mike Mitchell, an assistant coach in the secondary. Ollie was the defensive line coach for the last 2 years, and this past year, the Colts set a franchise record with 51 sacks, an Indianapolis-era franchise record. The year before, they came darn close.
Was it 42 the year
breaking
before?
The record. Yes, 45? It was 40
yeah,
plus.
They were within a few sacks.
Right. Mitchell was an assistant defensive backs coach, like I said, who had been on staff or coaching intern, whatever the specific term is, for a couple years here, even before that, and played a season with the Colts in 2018 as well. Mike is shaking his head.
My gut tells me that they were on board with bringing Gus back, but said, Gus, there's got to be some changes.
Right.
That's how else do you read this? Nate Ollie is a strange one because you go up and down that line, and almost everybody had the best year of their career.
Right.
They just did.
Let's list them. Quiddy Pay, best year of his career. Dio Dangbo, best year of his career. Tyquan Lewis, best year of his career. Grover Stewart,
that's
probably
tough,
not.
But
when he was playing, was fine. DeForest Buckner, fine year. Maybe not the best year of his career because he's had a lot of really
super
years.
solid, got what you got.
But all three of those other guys, Samson Ebukam,
Ebukam,
best year of his career.
It's just strange. They weren't good enough. I've used the word atrocious against the run, but there was a lot of stuff going on there, and it's just, and we're never going to know why. Well, it's because that
I'm sure that's the answer we'll get when we ask Shane.
But it was just strange.
Keep that internal.
Mike Mitchell, the day he tweeted after Michael Pittman got blown up against Pittsburgh,
you had the feeling
because remember we talked to Shane about that, and he gave one of those stern, no comments sort of. We'll keep that in house, and it was not like, hey, we'll keep that in house. No, it was like, we've addressed that. So
we're going to have a conversation about that, or we have already had a conversation about that.
And Mike Mitchell as well. That was against the Steelers.
Correct.
Yes.
And Mitchell played a good portion of his career in Pittsburgh, and he's always when he has spoken of it to him in the past has been always very glowing of his time in Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin and that culture over there. He's always seemed more of a Steeler than a Colt. And I don't mean that disparagingly and that he's not giving 100% of his effort here. Not at all. But I'm just saying he's always felt like this was a temporary stop. And that happens a lot with coaches for him. And he had an opportunity here, and he took advantage of the opportunity here. He was very valued here. Listen to Kenny Moore talk about how important Mike Mitchell was for his development as a young player and the leadership he brought to stabilize the defensive side of the ball that year when he came on. I believe it was midseason that he came on because of injuries in the secondary. They needed someone desperately. Mitchell came in and was very, very helpful for that young secondary during that time. But like I said, just always see I always felt like he was more of a Steeler who was just here, and I don't know if he goes back to the Pittsburgh coaching staff in some way, shape, or form, or goes somewhere else. I say, hey, best of luck to him. But like you said, it felt like after that day, after that tweet, that okay, I think your time is going to have a hard end here in Indianapolis.
And again, just so fans understand, these guys were not fired.
No,
their contracts were not renewed. The results are saying they're not working here anymore, but there's a difference. There just is.
Mm-hmm. Like if he was still under contract for one more year, he might still be here. I don't know.
Perhaps.
That's not out of the realm of
because
possibility.
assistant coaches, by and large, have 2-year contracts.
Right.
And so that's how it goes. And generally, I'd have to go back and look. I think it's rare that a guy gets fired. But it's
unless
not,
an entire staff leaves,
correct. Yes,
right.
correct. So, but I go back to what I initially said. I just think that they, because even Chris Ballard mentioned that there had to be changes made. Do we have to do something differently, whether it was philosophically, scheme-wise, on defensive staff? Because, God, they were 28th or 29th in scoring.
Yeah. 28th.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so rare that guys get fired that Chris Strasser had his job for the entire 2022 season on the offensive line.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
I'm sorry. I could not let that go.
Of all the guys that were fired,
That
all
were
the
fired
chaos,
on that side.
Unbelievable. And then he lands to Houston and they make the playoffs.
Exactly, yeah. Who has the last laugh?
And then you talked to, was it Ryan Kelly? And they were just talking about the offensive line continuity and how different it is this year. It's just like
everything
so odd.
Those guys said. Ryan, as much as anyone, he never mentioned Strasser by name, but everything he said was like Tony Sperano was the reason. Mm-hmm. He's because this was it. Pro Football Focus was the Colts. Were they weren't third? Were
I think
were
they were
third.
I think they were.
And again, seeing it week to week, I'm thinking, really? Top 10? Okay, I'll give you top 10.
Yeah.
But third, holy smokes! And you can always do what you want with their rankings and all that, but it was night and day, and it had to be how they were handled in the room, on the practice field, because there was more personnel stability on the line in 2022. Remember, this year Braden Smith misses 7 or 8 games. Ryan Kelly misses a handful of games.
Ryman missed a couple.
Ryman missed so I thought it was, and they point out coaching.
Mm-hmm. Yep. When the name's not mentioned, but everybody knows what's going on. It's like the 2022 quarterback position all over again.
Yes.
In some ways, like the name's not mentioned, but everybody knows who you're talking about. But we might mention his name.
We might circle back to a reference on
a little
that
bit later. Yes, in the podcast, a deep tease there, which I'm eagerly looking forward to. But
oh God, you're right.
Yeah,
it
just hit chat.
Now I know where you were going.
This
with
is
it.
why we did this entire podcast.
Okay.
When we're talking about quarterbacks for the Indianapolis Colts.
Just a giant troll job this week
in 2024. You guys who are listening, let me tell you. Boy, you have one heck of a podcast
whose
coming.
Name we won't mention,
but we will
be mentioned.
Yes. For the rest of this podcast, it is going to be a fantastic ride from here on out. But we will start with the players who are actually on roster currently. And that includes Gardner Minshew, whose contract will expire in mid-March, technically,
March 14th,
this year. Yeah,
March
exactly
8th,
what the day is, and he becomes a free agent. But we're going to kind of go position by position, or maybe cover several positions at once over the next couple weeks here on the Colts Blue Zone podcast as we continue on in the offseason. But we figured there's no better place to start than at quarterback. And it comes with a certainty. Finally, nicely, a certainty going into the future that Anthony Richardson is the Colts guy to build around moving forward. He's entering his second year. He got 4 starts in year 1. They certainly would have wanted more than that, a lot more. If you had told Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen in May, after they drafted Anthony Richardson, and all they're saying, and Jim Irsay, and all they're saying is he needs reps. You'd be like, well, he's going to get 4 starts this year.
173 reps.
Yep, the 173 snaps. That's it, or throws. They would have said that's not good to a man. That 2023 was detrimental, not detrimental, but not helpful enough. Not as helpful as they would want, as they would plan for Anthony Richardson's first year. However, Chap, looking ahead now, this is what it is. And you've got Anthony Richardson going into year 2, coming off an injury, trying to get better. And his development is not at square one by any stretch in the NFL, but it is not at, quote unquote, the square to
year
use the
2.
Indianapolis. Exactly, that the Colts wanted at this time, or in March or in April of last year.
Yeah, and again, we talked to Richardson at the end of the season, and the plan is if the rehab progresses, he's supposed to start throwing February. So him being ready for off-season work, we'll see about that. That's April. That might be a bit quick. I don't know. OTAs, probably.
Right.
Certainly training camp. And one thing, again, I did the story that I posted yesterday, and he yes, he started 4 games. He only played 3 games.
Right.
Because he misses his second half of 2 games, so he basically played 12 quarters. Mm-hmm. Was it 84 passes he threw? I think it was 50-something of 84. I don't want to – the numbers get clogged up. But last offseason, he wasn't the guy. He wasn't the guy until – was it the second week of August?
I think so, when they officially named him.
So until then, they're sort of –
and they were flipping back and forth.
That's what I mean.
First-team reps. Yeah, exactly.
That's what I mean.
It wasn't like some big smokescreen. This is what they were actually doing.
Because they didn't know.
Right.
Now, they
wanted.
Right. How many is it? Have you got it there?
Yeah, it's 50 completions on 84 attempts.
That's what I thought.
Just under 60% on completion percentage.
So again, going into this offseason, they will know. They can tailor the offense around this guy, as opposed to, yes, they sort of did last year, but you just didn't know. So they'll have the entire offseason, knock on wood. They'll have all of training camp, and this is their guy. And that's got to be huge. Again, we'll see how far along his rehab will have him. And I think it's probably important that he's ready to go to some level for OTAs. Mm-hmm. I just do the veteran minicamp camp on OTAs, and you would think that with rehab, with the throwing, he should be okay by late April, middle of May. Mm-hmm. So, but to know who your guy is, and then we'll get into the pecking order behind him. But moving forward, to know he's your guy and we can build around his strengths is huge.
Yeah, Matt, I think if you had to grade Anthony Richardson's rookie year, you'd get an incomplete.
Absolutely.
Nice I.
Same here.
But like if you could, and that's obvious, so I don't think you need to really break that down too much, but if you could grade just the eye test, to turn a phrase, like what, how would you evaluate what you saw from Richardson in his limited snaps here in Indianapolis?
I mean, I really felt this way after watching him play a couple games. I think the Colts knocked it out of the park on picking him in the draft. We saw so much with the mobility. There was more awareness out there than I think I expected, better command of the offense than I expected. And, man, that guy can throw the football.
Yeah. I didn't see too many, as Andrew Luck called them, bonehead throws. And like there were mistakes, there was imperfections, there were, like in chess you would call them inaccuracies, but I didn't see as many blunders as I thought I would, even in 4 games. Like you thought, especially at the start of the year, that there would be like a real a low level expectation, and he surpassed I had, like I said, lower expectations.
What was his completion? 59%.
59%.
Yeah, like 59 and a half.
And it's got to be mid-60s. It has to be.
He's got to
work his way up.
Some of those intermediate routes, some of the things that require a little bit softer of a touch, but we kind of knew that coming in, is that's a developing part of his game, and he's still got to work on that.
And we compared him last year when we knew he was the Colts quarterback to a Josh Allen in his development type thing. And in his first couple years, especially his first year, Josh Allen was down in that range, like 50s, low 50s. At Wyoming, he was in that range. And then after 2 years, boom, shot up to mid-60s to high 60s because of the development that he had there under Brian Daboll, under Ken Dorsey was the quarterback coach again, and by also bringing in Stephon Diggs at the opportune time certainly helped.
That'll help.
Yeah, it helped a little bit, just a little bit. But so we've compared it to that, saying that like it's certainly not. It's not. You look at 59%, and if you have a seasoned quarterback, chap, that's bad. Like you lose jobs when you're year 4 in the NFL.
Because that means you're not doing it
right
on like third down.
Yeah.
On third down is
you're not being efficient.
Right. Yeah, you're not making it. But rookie year, that is not something you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. No. So Richardson had, like I said, a rookie year that I thought was a solid B plus with the eye test. Like I'm not going to give it an A from what I saw, but because I want to be more.
You want more.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you need
more.
I'd be more like if I'm covering the Texans now and I see C.J. Stroud's rookie year, he gets an A because.
Who do you feel better about, the Colts or Carolina?
Carolina. I feel better if I'm the Colts right
now.
So
do I.
Yeah.
You have no idea.
None.
This is almost like in Carolina. It's almost like Jacksonville's first year with Trevor Lawrence.
Very much so.
I consider that a wasted year.
Absolutely. Just
I
a
kind of
complete
think that Bryce
waste.
Young's is as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd much rather be looking into the future. I'd rather be Indianapolis. And heck, Panthers traded away their first round pick.
He's got to be the guy.
Yeah.
No, but then so does Richardson.
Yep, you're right.
Richardson has got to be the guy here, or it's going to be desolation for the next 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. So with him solidified at number 1, we turned our attention to number 2 and beyond that at the quarterback position for the Colts. Gardner Minshew had, by every metric for a backup quarterback, a fantastic fill-in season as a starter. Brought a team that was projected to win 6.5 games to the brink of the playoffs. Led them there. Was very much appreciated, liked, respected in the locker room, among the coaching staff for his contribution. But now we can turn our attention to looking forward as well. Like we can evaluate what he did, which was everything you would have wanted from him.
He was everything
you would have wanted / expected.
Correct.
Like together. Like if you had reasonable expectations, he was everything, like every bit reasonable expectations that you would have had.
And the criticism comes because he got you right there, and he couldn't get you a smidgen more. But that's
couldn't complete 4th and 1 to Tyler Goodson out of the backfield.
I'll go to my grave saying make a better throw.
Yep. I will too. And yeah, like you can
Josh,
say,
and I'm sitting there watching Josh Allen. There was a 4th and 1 or 4th and 2.
Yeah, I've the same thing from last week.
Now he threw to the receiver, but it was the same concept.
Same idea.
And he put it right where you can run with it. And
yep.
But again, having said that, there is a ceiling, and everything that we say, it seems to be we're trashing Gardner Minshew, and I don't mean to. It's just that there is a ceiling, but there's a ceiling with virtually every backup. There was a ceiling with Joe Flacco. He finally got to his ceiling, but that's what you get with backups, and you hope when you get a backup that he plays 2 games, not whatever it was, 13.
Yeah, and this is a completely different conversation, obviously. If it is Gardner filling in a couple of games, picking up a couple of wins for the Colts, then you're like, okay, great, we got to keep this guy here.
Go in against Houston and finish a game, and not only just finish it, but a star in it. Mm-hmm. And Houston and Tennessee. Mm-hmm. But it's the old thing, and it's almost always true: is the longer backups play, the more you see why they are in the pecking order of the NFL. But that shouldn't diminish what he brought to this team this year, because he's one of the main reasons they were within a 4th and 1 of doing something really special.
Yeah, I think the biggest question, I think that Shane Steichen would love to have Gardner Minshew back because he has a good relationship with him. Chris Ballard, I think, would love to have Gardner Minshew back as the backup quarterback. I think the biggest question comes to, is there another team that's going to give him a chance to be the starter in game 1?
Did another team see enough to think, well, he's better than what we've got?
Exactly. Whether that's just a bridge guy to bring him in, like, I don't know, you're Washington, for example, and you draft Jaden Daniels, and you don't know if you want him to play week 1. Like, he's like a 4 or 5 year, much different than Anthony Richardson in terms of experience, like starter in college. Maybe you think that he needs to develop more to be in the NFL and needs to sit for a bit behind a veteran. And you say, okay, Gardner's going to be our guy. We're going to give him a 2-year contract, $15 million. And then Jaden Daniels, we're going to draft number 3 overall, or whatever it is, number 2, wherever they pick. And we're going to sit him, and he's going to come in. Heck, he comes in at game 7 or 8.
And what you're describing is kind of what the Colts did with Minshew this year.
Yes.
They wanted Richardson to be the guy.
Right.
But would it be week 1 or would it be week 5 or 6?
Right. I am describing that. So he could find himself in an exact same position he is this year. But I think to Minshew, that's better than what he's at now with the Colts. Because where he is now is entirely a number 2. Entirely a number 2. And the only way that he plays is if somebody is hurt again. Undeniably, unequivocally, he came here with the idea that he could be number 1. And I think since he now has the option as an unrestricted free agent, he's going to look for that or more. So even if the Colts, and I think they do, want him back to be their number 2, the ball is in Minshew's court. It is not in the Colts' court.
Initially, it's in Minshew's court.
Yes, because he's going to go out and he's going to look for other deals, and I think he's going to get something something better than what the Colts will give him, just because of what he did this year. He led a team that was not expected to do anything to the brink of the playoffs. Like, he's a respected quarterback around the league. I don't know. Nobody's going to build a team around him. Nobody's going to even give him really the Baker Mayfield chance, I think, of last year to compete. Like, is it going to be Baker Mayfield? Is it going to be this other guy? Who was their other backup quarterback? I can't even remember. Is it like Will Grier or something like that? I can't even remember who their backup is in Tampa Bay. But it was like him and another guy who's like 3 or 4 years into the league who, second, third round pick, who, it's okay, he's going to be the starter. I don't think he's going to get that same opportunity, but it could be just like he had this year, an opportunity with a first round pick. Wherever Michael Penix Jr. goes to Seattle, and that would be a bad example because they have Geno Smith, but he gets drafted to Atlanta, and they want someone like Gardner Minshew to come in and kind of show him the ropes. I think that is a much more attractive position for him to be in personally than it would be here. So those are my thoughts about Gardner Minshew. You guys can fill in the gaps.
Will his opportunities be more on that or on the contract he gets from somebody? Or they go hand. Of course, if you're bringing somebody in to compete for the number one job, the money's got to be equivalent to that.
Right.
He signed here for $3.5 million, ended up getting $2 more million in incentives. So he basically signed one. He got 1 year, 5.5. Well, he's not coming back here for that. I mean, what's he come back here for? 8, 9, and again, Chris Ballard mentioned maybe Syke and even, but it was Ballard that. They will do their due diligence on backup quarterbacks because we saw the value of having a backup quarterback who knows what he's doing and can handle things for a while. So it'll be very interesting to see if Minshew gets a chance to go somewhere to challenge for the starting job, or is it more driven on the contract he gets? And it'd be hard to turn down a good contract to get more money to be a backup somewhere. Let's say the Colts give him $10 million to go, as opposed to going to somewhere else. You at least got a chance to compete for maybe a little bit less money. He did exactly what you're supposed to do.
Yep.
He and Michael Pittman,
both of them.
I mean, it's timing. Have your one of your better years. In some respects, this was Minshew's best year in your contract year.
Yeah, and Matt, to that point that Chap just made, Pro Football Focus ranks Gardner Minshew as the 4th best available free agent QB, and he's behind Kirk Cousins, who will be a starter next year, Ryan Tannehill, who will be probably back up next year, and Baker Mayfield, who will be a starter next year.
Probably in for a pretty decent payday, too, Baker.
Exactly.
And Mayfield's not going anywhere.
No, no, he's staying in Tampa Bay for sure.
So by doing that, they consider Mayfield the 3rd best.
The second best backup, really, because Cousins will be a starter, Mayfield will be a starter, and so Tannehill is the only one.
On the open market, he'll be the 3rd best option on the open market
as a quote unquote starter.
Right. Because you're right. Mayfield technically a free agent quarterback, but there's no chance they're not going to bring him back.
Right. So yeah, that's enough for a good payday in free agency. It sounds like it. So.
And when we saw so many teams, and the Colts were one of them this year with losing their starting quarterback, and you kind of saw the importance of the backup this year more 100%. Than any other season that I can recall in recent memory. That could definitely make the market a little more crowded for Gardner than maybe we thought. Although looking through the different football analysis, and there are a million different football blogs and a million different people, some who are informed, some who are not. But the general consensus is that Gardner probably most likely returning to the Colts. That even though there is a market there, it's not going to be enough to draw him out.
We will see. It depends on the offer he gets.
It's going to be on the offer.
Really does.
Absolutely, because SpotRack, which tracks player salaries, says that his calculated market value is about $5.5 or $5.3 million a year.
Right.
So if you give him something in the 2-year, 3-year, $13-14 million deal that's above sort of what they've calculated as the market value, then you'd have to take that deal.
Mm-hmm. The Colts do have cap space, which it seems like they always do, and the cap doesn't matter anyway, and all that stuff that we say every year. But so like the money is not technically, like, I don't think an object for the Colts, but it's just where Chris Ballard wants to spend money.
Right. Where is he comfortable?
Yeah, because again, they got
guys to sign.
6 or 7 guys that
and they got rookies to sign too.
That I would rank more pressing than Minshew. I mean, but I would have him certainly top 5.
We can do that sometime. We can have a show about that, like our most important free agents.
Teams, the cap is important. Cash is important. Cash is the overriding thing.
Cash is king.
And how much do the Irsay family decide they have to invest? You still got to buy guitars. So, but obviously the biggest, and we'll talk about this either next week or the week after with the receivers. Michael Pittman, he's whatever their cap space is, and you can
kiss it goodbye if you're going to be able to keep
but
him.
Again, you can backload a little bit, but he's going to take $20 million cap space, and but they've got bigger fish to fry until you figure, if not for Minshew, they wouldn't have been in this position this year. They just wouldn't have been.
Right. And also Sam Ellinger still on the roster going into his last year, his final year, his 4th year of his rookie contract as a 6th-round pick in 2021. I'm sure there's plenty of Colts fans who still want to see what the young man can do given the full-time job. And you could count Jim Irsay in that category, at least at one point a year ago or so, before the Colts took off for New England. And he met Bill Belichick. And it was
still one of the most painful games to watch from a quarterback standpoint. Well, from a team's offense.
From a person standpoint. From a human being standpoint.
Was it 9 sacks? It wasn't 11. It was 9?
I think it was 9. I think it was 9. That's the number that sticks out in my head.
Yes, I just remember Matt Judon getting 2 on the first drive and being like, okay, here we go.
You might want to block that guy at some point.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's going to be a long day here in jolly old New England. He's a practice squad QB. He is not even a backup. And so if anyone wants to jump into my mentions, go ahead. But he's just not a viable backup, especially for if you want to back up for a quarterback who had a very injury-prone rookie year, and you want a steady guy who has experience and knows what he's doing in the NFL. Like, do I like Ellinger? Yes, I think he's an intriguing young prospect. But at some point, you need a steady, solid backup quarterback in the NFL. Like, especially if you're in the situation the Colts are in. Like, if you're a team like the Colts of the 2000s, and Peyton is your guy, and as Tom Moore says, if 18 goes down, we're
and we don't
in trouble, and we don't practice
in
trouble. Like, and if you want Ellinger to be your backup in that situation, fine. But that's not where the Colts are now. So Ellinger is not your backup quarterback now. It's going to be someone else.
And they had that. Always keep in mind that personnel moves have to be seen through Shane Steichen's eyes now.
Yes.
Not just Chris Ballard. Chris Ballard loves Sam Ellinger. He does. It's kind of like a Michael Pittman. This guy has all of the character traits you want in a player in your locker room. And Shane Steichen said that's fine, but they brought in Gardner Minshew as the backup quarterback. So and that I don't mean to trample on Sam, but yeah, they will. If Gardner Minshew's not back here this coming year, there will be someone else.
So if it is someone else,
nice transition.
There are options. We talked about Ryan Tannehill already very briefly. He's 35 years old.
Did you put that last notation on there on this next list we're going on?
Yes.
Okay. It wasn't me.
Okay, go ahead. Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I didn't do it. But Ryan Tannehill is going to be one of the more sought-after backup quarterbacks, I think, because of his experience in the NFL. He's gotten – go ahead, Chap.
Before we get into this, ideally, do you want a backup quarterback who more resembles your starting quarterback skill set?
That's a good question.
More mobility. Yes. I thought they got a ton out of Minshew with the RPOs. They really did. Mm-hmm. But he was seldom a threat. But do you want a quarterback that maybe closer resembles? I remember when Michael Vick was the quarterback in Atlanta. How do you have when he goes down? You do a totally different offense,
right? And I personally think the answer to that question is yes.
If it works, you can't force it.
If it works, right? Like, if you have the opportunity to do it. I don't think you want to overspend dramatically to do it, but I think the ideal scenario for a head coach and a team and offense, for that matter, is to have one game plan.
And there's a player or two on this list that fit that.
Exactly. Yes. And there's a player or two on this list that don't fit that.
Ryan Tannehill.
Exactly. Tannehill's one of them. He's more of a statue that doesn't move around quite as much. He's actually he's a decent at moving in the pocket, but he's not a running quarterback.
Right. Especially he was earlier in his career. He was, but he's now reached the point that that's not a thing that he does anymore.
He's 35 now. He's older. He doesn't have the legs he used to have. Joe Flacco, did he ever have legs? I don't know.
I don't believe he did.
Now he's on your list here. Joe Flacco would not be anywhere close to what the Colts would want, and he couldn't even do the RPO. I don't think in really any serious sense.
Defense will laugh at you. They say, "Really?"
Exactly. Go Blue Hens, but sorry, Joe Flacco, this isn't going to be your place. After Ryan Tannehill, I think Jacoby Brissett is an intriguing option, but again, he's slower than cement. He's deceptively slow, I believe, is what Chap has said.
I go back to was it a 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 at Tennessee, and I'm thinking he's got the entire right side.
But what he can do is get 3rd and 1 for you. He was always really good.
He was very good at that.
Screw that.
Yeah,
tush push. We just do it on our own.
Darn right. Jacoby Brissett, an option there, was with the Commanders last year at $8 million to back them up. Tyrod Taylor, a name that is more of a mobile quarterback, but he is also 34 years old himself. So he is getting to that point where his legs are not what they used to be earlier in his career, whether he was with Buffalo or Baltimore. And he was with the Giants, like I mentioned last year, and got some limited playing time with them there. Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, the number 1 and number 2, flip-flop them, overall picks back a couple years ago. Both made $4 or $5 million last year as in backup roles. Mariota is more of the same vein that the Colts would want from Anthony Richardson. Mariota, the Colts, I've always said this, and you've heard it on the podcast, the Colts have always seen the worst of Marcus Mariota. Like, he was always terrible whenever he played them with the Titans, and he played decent to well at other times. But if you're a Colts fan, you see the name Marcus Mariota, you're like, why? He was awful. Terrible. So there's part of me that thinks that too, that's the mindset among different Colts brass, that I don't know what
we showed you who he is.
Exactly.
How he played against us.
He never did all that well.
Right.
So you can see us whittling down all these names very quickly and very easily. And that's I think an interesting point to make, Chap. Even if we're somewhere else, we're in another place that needs a backup quarterback, and they're looking at this same list, and they have their own podcast here in an illustrious podcast studio in a local TV station. They can poke holes in Gardner Minshew themselves too, in spite of what we say of him here and his value here.
Right.
Like, for all these guys, that's why they're backup quarterbacks, and we're not talking about them as franchise game changers. So important to bring that up as we're going down this list. Tyler Huntley with the Ravens.
That's the name that jumped out at me.
That is a name that jumps out to me too. But I think, again, Baltimore,
they're not going to let him go.
There's a lot of intrigue to stay there. Like, why would you, if you're Tyler Huntley, really want to go somewhere unless you get an opportunity to start? And you're not getting an opportunity to start.
You're not getting it here.
No.
So,
like, maybe you want to be like a Gardner Minshew and go somewhere like in Atlanta if you're going to get the number 1 reps, and then whoever fills in after that, whether it's Penix or Drake May or whoever it is. Like there's no reason for you, if you're Tyler Huntley, to leave Baltimore unless you just hate Baltimore and you hate the coaches. And there's no reports, there's no stories that he does that. Like, if you're going to be a backup in Baltimore.
And I think they value the backup.
They do, very much so.
Because I think I've seen, was it Jackson's, was he missed like 6 or 7 games the last few years? I think he missed 1 game this year. I think
yes,
it was.
He was very healthy this year, which is why he's an MVP candidate
We talked
again.
about that last offseason.
But when you've got a running quarterback,
it's always good to have some insurance back there.
Right. And that's what the backup guy is. It's kind of like insurance in general. Mm-hmm. You have it because maybe you need it.
Yep. Another name is Josh Dobbs. Who will be a free agent this offseason. He had, like a lot of these backup quarterbacks have like a 1-year, $5 million, $6 million, $7 million evaluation from Spot Rack in terms of their projected market value. And Dobbs is in that mix. He started a couple more games this year than some of the other guys. Really was right behind Minshew, I think, in terms of backups who played a significant role this year.
But the longer he played, the more it was like, nah.
Yeah, exactly. Nah. And that's what happens to backup quarterbacks, really.
You get the film on them.
Right.
Yep.
Yes.
You get film on on these guys, and then you start to see how we can, counter some of the things they do well.
Yeah, some more guys who would be available this offseason. Sam Darnold would be available this offseason as a free agent. Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater, Nate Sudfeld, the IU product. Let's go,
He's
Big
still
Nate.
around.
Yeah, I know, right? Blaine Gabbert from Kansas City.
He's still around,
well.
yeah.
Believe it or not,
he is.
Josh Johnson on this list from Baltimore as well.
Would you get to the name? Get to the name. Would you quit?
So here we go, guys. At the 54-minute mark of the Colts Blue Zone podcast on January 25th, in the year of our Lord 2024, maybe the best option with all other details ignored is a young man
27-7
who had 27 touchdowns to just 7 interceptions only 3 years ago, right here in this city. Man by the name of Carson Wentz, who moved to Los Angeles to be backup for the Rams at the end of this year.
I believe he still lives here.
I think he does too. Yes, he moved temporarily. He might still be living
Brownsburg, Zionsville.
Out in that range. He bought a house. Like, he's still got his food truck.
I was going to say he still runs his philanthropy around here.
Still has a presence here. Only made $1.3 million with the Rams this year, just for a couple games near the end of the year. His number would be bigger if it was for an entire season, based on his experience in the NFL and his ability as well. But Carson technically played in 2 games, but really it was only one that he gained any stats this year. It was the very last game of the year for the Rams. What an intriguing stat line he had there for the Rams. Only 163 yards passing, but 17 passes thrown. Completed 71% of those passes, by the way, in the final of the season. Completed that for, let's see, we had 6.8 yards per pass attempt. This year, Gardner Minshew was at 6.7, by the way.
You really
right around that range.
You could be lying to me, and I wouldn't know it because I didn't research that.
No, you wouldn't. His quarterback rating was 99.8 in that one game. Did you know that? And Gardner Minshew's for the whole season, 84.6. Just throwing that out there. Rush attempts. This one, the most intriguing. If you want a quarterback that can run, Carson Wentz had 17 rush attempts in his one start. The final game of the season there. He blew out the Los Angeles Rams franchise record for rushing attempts by a quarterback in one game, which was previously held by the venerable Tony Banks, of course.
Oh, wow.
As you all know.
That takes me back.
17 rush attempts for 56 yards and scored a rushing touchdown as well in that game for the Rams.
That's on pace for 1,000 yards.
Exactly. That's what I'm
games.
saying. He had 2 passing touchdowns as well, so 3 touchdowns in one game there. And had 26 fantasy points in that last week. 26 in 1 week. Gardner Minshew only averaged 11 fantasy points
You
per
have
game
a better chance of being the backup quarterback next year than CW does.
I mean, I think the answer is pretty clear, though. You're looking at a guy with a skill set who can throw. The completion percentage is good.
Like, it's okay.
And then you can run the RPO stuff.
You can run the same exact offense.
The door isn't closed.
Let me tell you this, too.
It is bolted shut.
Like Michael Pittman Jr., he had a fine season this year.
I'm tuning you out right now.
But you can, I know, and everyone's already clicked off the podcast by now, too, so nobody's listening anymore. But I will continue to say that there are metrics, several of them, that say that Michael Pittman Jr.'s best season as a pro
I don't disagree with that.
With Carson Wentz at quarterback. So the best season as a pro for both Carson Wentz and Jonathan Taylor came with Carson Wentz as their quarterback right here in Indianapolis. Your best players had their best years when a young man named Carson Wentz was your quarterback here in Indianapolis.
You're going to be impossible to live with if they would go down that road again.
But as long as Jim Irsay is the owner and operator of the Indianapolis Colts.
Put Chris Ballard in that train, too.
And as long as Chris Ballard is the operator, we'll say, we'll give him that. Jim Irsay, the owner, Chris Ballard, the operator of the Indianapolis Colts. They will go down a road that is not the best for the franchise, because I believe I've already made that point perfectly clear. That the obvious best choice for backup quarterback here in Indianapolis for the young Anthony Richardson would be a former second overall pick in the NFL draft. Another guy who came into the league with high expectations, knows how to manage them. Exactly, Ryan Leaf himself. He's gonna hop off the microphone and end his podcast so he can go back. Great Falls, Montana's own Ryan Leaf, a former Bison.
I think that this has all the makings, seriously, of being a great ESPN, what do they call it, 30 for 30?
Yep.
I'm serious. Carson Wentz on how the career went. However,
derailed, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's back on now, so there's going to be a comeback. Let's go. Send him out to L.A. and back up Justin Herbert so he can be under Captain Comeback himself out there, take over, lead the Chargers. If Herbert unexpectedly, surprisingly goes down himself, it's a resurgence for Carson Wentz.
It's really an interesting story, and I will be beyond shocked and stunned in all those words if the only way that he comes back and plays at Lucas Oil is if he's on a roster of a visiting team.
Well, if they want an inferior backup quarterback here next year, then that's the path they will go down. I say tongue-in-cheek because I know this entire time, let's just set the record straight, Carson Wentz ain't coming here. It's not going to happen, like Chap said. But
you can dream.
But I can dream.
But
I can make an argument.
But you make a good argument
But
for
you
it.
can be delusional, so go right ahead and dilute.
And I will be delusional on this podcast. I promise you all that.
54-minute mark, is that when he hit it?
Yeah, it was 54 minutes.
Yeah,
So
I want to know when I can stop listening.
For the past 5-6 minutes or so is when I have been going on my own diatribe here. So I do think it'll be intriguing as to who they bring in as backup quarterback. Excuse me. I think, like I said, they would love for Gardner. I think the best possible solution for the offense is to have, like I said, one offense, so you have one style of quarterback who plays. But like you said, Chap, you can't force it. If it's not there, you don't take it, and you take the best possible solution. And I think that's what they did with Gardner Minshew last year. Like, they knew they wanted to develop an offense around Anthony Richardson and his unique talents. There are not quarterbacks out there by the truckload who have the talents of Anthony Richardson, for crying out loud. So you can't have the exact same offense anyway. But you can have a guy who's type, B minus.
And again, they to some level were planning on both quarterbacks during the offseason.
Right, that's a good point.
They had to sort of have those options because while they wanted it to be Richardson, they didn't know it would be him until they saw him extended during practice.
And I think that's a good point now to say that now they know.
Right.
So there's going to be one offense, or there should be one offense, not really two.
The two offense will be the one that's in a binder.
Right.
That you pull out.
Right.
Just in case.
So, it will be. It might be a change. Might not be a change.
The backup quarterback, in my mind, in March, whenever they do it, will be a name that we know, and you say, okay, I
think so too.
Yes. I think they just need to get, whether it's Gardner, just make it solid. Get somebody that because that has been sort of an issue before in the past with this team having a quality backup.
When Carson Wentz had to play on one ankle or half an ankle in Tennessee.
That didn't tell you how ill-prepared they were
exactly.
at the position.
For the most obvious problem that they could have had. I'm done. I'm not going to talk about this. We've beat it to death.
4th and 5th receivers you have, 3 tackles you have, all these guys.
They have Jake Eason there as their backup quarterback, and they don't want Jacob Eason, and they don't want to play him. They don't want to play him. Anyway, we're done. No more talk down that rabbit hole, at least for today. Maybe next week we get into.
So you didn't disappoint, Dave. So
I never do, guys. I never do. Hey, we appreciate you all listening.
Can you imagine if Wentz went to Syracuse?
Oh my gosh! Even in my my most crazy delusions,
I just threw up in my mouth.
Certainly love having you guys here and being our listeners and tuning in, downloading, and subscribing every week. And like I said, I promise that my delusions are only a small part of the Colts Blue Zone podcast.
If we talk receivers or tight ends, you cannot bring up CW.
It's not my intention to.
Although with the receivers, you could with Pittman.
He made that rather salient point about Pittman.
In the pros, only his second year, too. He's developed a lot more than that. Can you imagine?
Why did I do that
right
again?
now?
See,
that was your fault.
We were rounding third and heading for home. I know that's a baseball analogy.
I had to go back and make sure I touched third base.
Now it's not my fault anymore. But hey, seriously, you can follow us on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone. Mike is at mchappell51. Read all his work online, fox59.com, cbs4indy.com. Matt on Twitter is at Statomatty. I'm at DaveG_sports. We'll see you next week on the Colts Blue Zone podcast.